The emergency session had been called 3 months too late. Thalarine stood at the center of the council chamber, her feathers ruffled with anxiety as she addressed the gathered representatives. Around her, beings from 100 different worlds sat in their designated spaces, all sharing the same confused expression. "They just left," she said, repeating the words that no one seemed to understand. All of them. Every human in council space packed their belongings and went home. Wormix clicked his mandibles together in agitation. The insectoid minister had spent the last week trying to understand why his department's systems were failing. There must be a reason. Did we offend them? Did they declare some kind of protest? Thalarine shook her head. Nothing. They filed paperwork. Formal withdrawal documents. All completely legal and proper. They even offered to train replacements for their positions. She paused, looking around the chamber. We never responded. I think we all assumed they were not serious. The chamber fell silent. It was true. When the human documents had arrived 6 months ago, most council members had barely glanced at them. Humans were always so quiet, so cooperative. The idea that they would actually leave seemed impossible. They had been part of the council for 200 years. Daehain watched the session from the public gallery. He was one of the last humans still in council space, though not for much longer. His ship was scheduled to depart in 2 days. He had stayed only to close out some final business contracts. As he watched the council struggle to understand what had happened, he felt a mix of sadness and relief. A young council aide approached him after the session ended. "Sir, the mediator Thalarine wishes to speak with you. She hopes you might explain your people's decision." Daehain nodded and followed the aide to a small conference room. Thalarine was waiting there, her large eyes focused on him with desperate hope. "Daehain, thank you for coming," she said. "Please help me understand. Why did humanity leave? What did we do wrong?" He sat down slowly, choosing his words carefully. "You did not do anything specifically wrong. That is part of the problem. You did nothing at all." Thalarine tilted her head in confusion. "I do not understand. For 200 years, humans maintained your hyperspace relay network," Daehain explained. "We staffed your medical stations in deep space. We operated the agricultural satellites that fed your frontier colonies. We managed your automated systems, your supply chains, your infrastructure maintenance. Did you know any of this?" Thalorian's feathers drooped. "I knew humans worked in those areas, but I assumed many species did." "Only humans," Daehain said quietly. "Only us, because no one else wanted those jobs. They were not glorious, not important enough for your warriors or your scientists or your artists, so humans did them, and you never noticed." "But surely we appreciated you did not even know we were doing it," Daehain interrupted gently. "When we filed withdrawal documents 6 months ago, when we offered to train replacements, no one responded. You all thought the work would just continue somehow, that someone else would do it, that it was not important enough to worry about." Thalarine was silent for a long moment. "The hyperspace relays are failing now. 3 major junction points have gone dark in the past month." "I know," Daehain said. "Your medical stations are running out of supplies too. And your agricultural satellites need their annual maintenance, which is now 4 months overdue. Can you help us? Can you convince your people to return?" Daehain shook his head. "I would not even if I could. But I cannot. Humanity is not angry at the council. We are just tired of being invisible. We tried for 2 centuries to be good partners, good members of this community. But we were never seen as partners. We were seen as the help." "We can change," Thalarine said desperately. "We can offer humans better positions. More recognition." "We do not want recognition anymore," Daehain said, standing up. "We want to build our own society, where our work matters, because we choose to do it, not because no one else will." "I am sorry, mediator. I truly am. But humanity has moved on." Across the station, Giwu was overseeing the loading of the last cargo shipment. Her crew moved efficiently, transferring crates of repair parts and medical supplies onto the waiting council transport. This was the final delivery on their contract. After this, the cargo ship Bright Star would return to human space, where it would begin running routes between human colonies. A council official approached her. A reptilian being named Krevdar. Captain Ji Woo, I wish to discuss an extension of your contract. We need reliable cargo transport, and your service has been excellent. Thank you, but no, Ji Woo said, checking her datapad. Our contract ends with this delivery. We are going home. I can offer triple your current rate, Krevdar said. Your ship is one of the last human vessels still operating in council space. The supply network is falling apart without your people. Ji Woo looked at him calmly. Then I suggest you hire other cargo ships. There are many species in the council with transport vessels. They do not know the routes like you do. They do not understand the scheduling systems your people built. Then they will need to learn, Gu said. She handed him a data chip. This contains all of our route information, scheduling algorithms, and maintenance protocols. It is all documented. Any competent logistics coordinator can use it. Krevdar took the chip with his clawed hand. Will you at least stay long enough to train someone? We offered training 6 months ago, Ji Woo said. No one accepted. I have a new job waiting for me in human space. A job where I will actually get to go home to my family, instead of spending months traveling between your stations. I am sorry, but my answer is no. She turned back to her crew, calling out final checks. Krevdar stood there, holding the data chip, finally beginning to understand the scope of what the council had lost. In the Bright Star's cargo bay, young crew member Hyun Woo sealed the last container. He had worked in council space for 5 years, maintaining systems that most people never saw or thought about. Now he was going home, and he could not wait. His sister had just had a baby, and he would finally get to meet his nephew. His parents were getting older, and he wanted to spend time with them. All the things he had missed while keeping council infrastructure running. He did not hate the council. He just did not want to sacrifice his life for people who never even noticed he was there. The cargo ship departed 3 hours later, leaving behind a council that was only beginning to realize what it had lost. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. The cracks that had started small were now becoming canyons. Warmix stood in the central control room of the hyperspace relay network, staring at screens filled with red warning lights. 15 major junction points were now completely offline. Travel times between core worlds had tripled. Some outer colonies were completely cut off. Unable to send or receive ships at all? Show me the diagnostic report again. He ordered the technician beside him. The technician, a being with 6 arms and crystalline skin, manipulated the console. The problem is in the secondary resonance calibrators. They are drifting out of alignment. According to the maintenance logs, they require recalibration every 90 days. So recalibrate them, Warmix said impatiently. We do not know how, the technician admitted. The procedure is in the human documentation, but it requires understanding of their mathematical models. We have tried to hire experts, but no one in council space has the necessary background. These systems were designed by humans, maintained by humans, understood only by humans. Warmix felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. What about the other relay points? The ones still functioning? They will fail within the next 6 months, the technician said quietly. One by one. And we cannot stop it. Light years away, Misun received another message. She had been receiving them for weeks now. Ever since the medical station she used to run had started experiencing critical supply shortages, the messages were always the same. Desperate pleas for help, offers of money, promises of better working conditions. She deleted this one like all the others. Misan now worked at a hospital in New Seoul, a thriving human colony in what used to be considered isolated space. She had a small apartment near the ocean. She could walk to work. Her daughter attended a good school. Her husband worked as a teacher in the same town. They had dinner together every night when she worked for the council. She had been stationed at Medical Outpost 17, a facility that served 30 different species across 12 systems. She was the only doctor there. She worked 16-hour days. She saw her family twice a year if she was lucky. The council paid her well, but what good was money when she had no time to spend it or anyone to spend it with? The message she just deleted offered her 5 times her old salary, but it did not offer her a life. So she deleted it and went back to treating the patient in front of her. A human child with a broken arm would heal quickly and go back to playing with her friends? Commander. Kreftar faced a humiliation he never thought possible. His fleet, the pride of his species, was grounded. Not by enemy weapons or technological failure, but by a simple lack of spare parts. The parts existed. They were sitting in warehouses across council space, but there was no system to get them to the ships that needed them. The human-designed logistics network had collapsed completely. Ships were waiting for components that were 3 systems away, but no one knew how to coordinate the delivery. He had tried to hire civilian cargo ships to run parts. But without the scheduling system humans had maintained, everything was chaos. Ships arrived at the wrong stations. Parts were delivered to vessels that did not need them, while critical repairs went unfinished. His mighty warships sat in dock, waiting for components that should have arrived months ago. "This is unacceptable," he roared at his logistics officer. "We are warriors. We cannot be defeated by paperwork and shipping schedules." His logistics officer, a younger member of his species, spoke carefully. "Commander, the problem is that we never learned to do this work ourselves. We always assumed humans would handle it. They made it look easy, so we thought it was easy. But it was not. They were just very good at their jobs." Kreftar wanted to argue, but he could not. The officer was right. Humans had managed the entire military supply chain for decades. They had made it so efficient that no one even thought about it. Parts simply arrived when needed. Ships were always ready. Food, fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, everything flowed smoothly because humans made it flow. Now those humans were gone, and the flow had become a flood in some places and a drought in others. Essence of light existed in a state that most physical beings could not comprehend. It perceived reality across multiple dimensions, seeing patterns and connections that others missed. For months, it had been observing the Council's decline with growing understanding. The Council was not just losing specific functions, it was losing its cohesion. Humans had not just done jobs, they had been the connective tissue. They were the ones who made sure the brilliant scientists' discoveries reached the people who needed them. They ensured that the warriors' fleets were supplied. They kept the artists' colonies fed. They maintained the infrastructure that let everyone else focus on what they considered important work. Now that tissue was gone, the Council was falling apart. Not with violence or drama, but with simple system failures that cascaded into larger problems. Essence of Light had seen civilizations fall before. This was how it usually started. Not with war, or plague, or disaster, but with the slow breakdown of the unglamorous systems that kept society functioning. Hyenwu sat in his small apartment on Terra Nova, a human colony world, reading messages on his datapad. His old workplace was offering him enormous sums of money to return. Just for 6 months, they said. Just to fix the critical systems. Just to train a few people. He had learned to ignore these messages, but this one was different. It came from someone he had actually liked, a young engineer named Dexior, who had always been respectful and curious. Hyenwu, I am trying to understand the relay system you maintained, the message read. I have all the documentation, but I am confused. Why did you design redundancy systems for scenarios that seem almost impossible? It seems wasteful. Hyenwu smiled sadly. He remembered asking his own mentor the same question 20 years ago. The answer had taken him years to truly understand. He typed a response, because impossible things happen. Because systems fail in unexpected ways. Because it is better to be prepared for something that never happens than unprepared for something that does. This is not waste. This is care. We built systems that way because we cared about the people depending on them. He paused, then added, Good luck, Dexior. I hope you learn to care about the work, not just getting it done. That is the real secret. He sent the message, then looked around his apartment. It was small, but comfortable. His girlfriend would be home from work soon. They were going to cook dinner together, something he never had time for when he worked in council space. Tomorrow was his day off. He planned to go hiking with friends. He had been offered 10 times his current salary to go back. But he was earning something now that money could not buy. A life, time, presence, the ability to build relationships and pursue hobbies, and sleep through the night without emergency calls. The council could offer him anything they wanted. He was not going back. In the council chambers, Speaker for Unity addressed the assembly. The situation had reached a crisis point. Colonies were being abandoned. Trade was collapsing. Species were threatening to withdraw from the council entirely. "We made a grave error," Speaker for Unity said, its translated voice carrying across the chamber. "We took humanity for granted. We assumed the work they did was simple, unimportant. We were wrong. And now we are paying the price for our blindness." The chamber was silent. Everyone knew it was true. But knowing the problem and solving it were very different things. "We must learn to do this work ourselves," Speaker for Unity continued. "We must train our people in maintenance, logistics, infrastructure management. We must change how we value these professions, or we will not survive." It was the right speech, the necessary speech. But as Wormix looked around at the assembled representatives, he saw doubt in every face. Could they really change their entire cultural values? Could warriors learn to be mechanics? Could scientists humble themselves to study supply chain management? The humans had made it look easy because they had spent 2 centuries getting good at it. The council had maybe 2 years before a complete collapse. Time was not on their side. The council delegation arrived at the human border station with all the ceremony they could muster. 6 representatives from the most influential species. Traveling in a diplomatic vessel that broadcast their importance to anyone watching, they came with offers, with promises, with everything they thought humans might want. Sun-Hee met them at the airlock. She was a senior diplomat in the Human Federation, chosen specifically because she had never worked in council space. The Federation wanted someone who would not be swayed by old friendships or guilt. "Welcome to Station Unity," she said formally. "Please follow me to the conference room." The delegation followed her through corridors that were clearly human-designed. Everything was functional, clean, efficient. Nothing fancy, but nothing broken either. They passed human workers who looked relaxed, who smiled at each other, who seemed genuinely content. This was not what the delegates had expected. In the conference room, Sun-Hee gestured for them to sit. "I understand you wish to discuss humanity's return to council space." Morthok, the warrior caste chairman, leaned forward. "We come to make amends. The council has voted to offer humanity seats on the High Council itself. Full voting rights. Equal status with the founding species. We also offer preferential trade agreements, technology sharing, and significant financial compensation for the misunderstanding." Sun-Hee listened politely, her face neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "That is a generous offer. May I ask what you hope to gain in return?" "We need your people to resume maintenance of critical infrastructure," Wormix said quickly. "The hyperspace network, the medical stations, the agricultural satellites. We cannot do it ourselves. We tried. We failed. We need human expertise." "I see, son," he said. She pulled up a holographic display. "Let me show you something." The display showed statistics, charts, graphs, all detailing the state of human colonies since the withdrawal from council space. "This is our population growth rate. It has increased by 40%. This is our educational achievement scores. Up 30%. This is our medical health outcomes. Improved across every metric. This is our scientific research output. We have made more discoveries in the past year than in the previous decade." She looked at each delegate in turn. "Do you know why? Because our people are home. Our doctors are treating their own communities instead of manning distant stations alone. Our engineers are building things for us instead of maintaining your infrastructure. Our teachers are in classrooms instead of traveling between systems. Our families are together, but surely the financial rewards," Wormix began. "Money does not matter if you have no time to spend it," Sun-Hee said. "No life to live. Our people who worked for the council were well paid. They were also exhausted, lonely, and invisible. They sacrificed their lives to keep your society running, and you never even noticed they existed." Wipera, the telepathic ambassador, spoke for the first time. Its mental voice was soft, careful. "We notice now. We see what we lost. We are truly sorry. Can you not forgive us? Sunhee's expression softened slightly. This is not about forgiveness. We are not angry at you. Anger would be easier, honestly. We are just tired, and we have found something better. Better than being part of the greatest galactic civilization, Morthok said, his pride showing through. Yes, Sunny said simply. Better than being invisible servants in someone else's civilization. We have our own now, and we like it. The delegation left empty-handed, but they did not give up. They began approaching individual humans, offering enormous personal contracts. A few accepted humans who genuinely missed the work or who needed the money for personal reasons. But it was dozens where they needed thousands. Young Su was one of those who accepted a contract. He was a brilliant engineer, and the council offered him a sum that would set up his family for generations. 6 months, they said. Just train some people. Just get critical systems running. He arrived at Relay Junction Sigma 7 to find himself alone with 3 trainees and hundreds of failing systems. The trainees were smart, educated in their own species' technologies, but human systems confused them. Why is there a backup for the backup? One asked, frustrated. Because the primary system might fail, and then the backup might fail, and you need a third option, Youngsu explained patiently. But how often does that happen? Almost never. But when it does, millions of people depend on this relay to get home. So we plan for almost never. The trainee shook its head. This is too complicated. Why not just make simpler systems? Youngsu sighed. He had this conversation a dozen times already, and he was only in his second week. Simpler systems fail more often. Complex systems with good redundancy are more reliable, but harder to maintain. Yes, that is the trade-off. Reliability versus simplicity. Humans chose reliability. The trainee walked away, clearly frustrated. Yang-Su looked at the hundreds of error messages on his screen. 6 months was not going to be enough. 6 years might not be enough. These systems needed constant attention from people who understood not just how they worked, but why they were designed that way back in human space. Jae-won sat in his office overlooking the capital city of New Terra. As president of the Human Federation, he received weekly reports on the Council's attempts to lure humans back. His advisors were divided. Some thought humanity should help, that it was the moral thing to do. Others argued that the Council needed to learn its lesson. Jae-won himself was somewhere in between. He had authorized individual humans to accept Council contracts if they wanted to. But he refused to send official Federation workers. He would not order humans to sacrifice their lives again for people who did not appreciate them. A message came through from Sun-hee. The Council delegation had departed. They seemed genuinely confused why their generous offers had been rejected. Jae-won was not surprised. The Council thought in terms of power and resources. They did not understand that humans had discovered something more valuable. Contentment, purpose, community, the chance to build something of their own. He typed a response to Sun-hee. Let them figure it out themselves. We tried to help for 200 years. It is their turn to try. Wiper returned to the council chambers and gave its report. The other representatives listened in growing dismay as it explained not just what Sun-hee had said, but what it had sensed from her mind. There is no anger, Wiperus said. No desire for revenge. No satisfaction in our suffering. There is only peace. They have moved on. We are now just a difficult chapter in their history that they have closed. That makes no sense, Morthok said. We are offering them everything they did not have before? No, Wiper corrected gently. We are offering them things we value. Power, status, wealth, but they do not value these things the same way we do. They value time with their families, meaningful work, being seen and appreciated. We cannot give them those things because we do not understand them ourselves. The chamber fell silent. It was a truth they did not want to accept. They had lost humanity not through cruelty or oppression, but through simple, persistent indifference. And indifference, it turned out, was harder to overcome than hatred. Youngsu counted down the days until his contract ended. He had done his best, but it was not enough. The trainees had learned some things, but not enough. The systems were running, but barely, and he was exhausted. On his last day, Thexior approached him. "Will you extend your contract?" "We still need you." Young-Su shook his head. "No, I am going home." "But we are not ready." "You will never feel ready," Young-Su said. "But you will learn. Or you will not. Either way, it is not my responsibility anymore." He meant it kindly, but Thexior looked hurt. Young-Su softened his tone. "I do not mean to be harsh, but I have a daughter I have not seen in 6 months. I have missed her birthday, her school play, and her first lost tooth. I receive videos, but that is not the same. I will not miss any more." Thexior nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you for what you taught us." Young-Su left on the next transport, relieved to be going home. Behind him, the relay junction's error messages were already starting to multiply again. The council was learning a hard lesson. Some mistakes cannot be fixed with money or apologies. Some relationships, once broken, cannot be restored. They could only watch as humanity built a new life without them, and try to survive in the world their indifference had created. 2 years had passed since humanity left. The council had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Thexior stood in front of a classroom full of young students from various species. He was teaching a course that did not exist 3 years ago: human infrastructure engineering. The irony was not lost on him. He was teaching others what he had barely learned himself. "Today, we will discuss redundancy planning," he said, pulling up a holographic diagram of a hyperspace relay. Human engineers design systems with multiple backup layers. This seemed wasteful to many of us at first, but we have learned why they did this. A student raised a tentacle. "Is it true that humans plan for problems that almost never happen?" "Yes," Thexior said. "And that is the key word. Almost. Almost never is not the same as never." 3 months ago, Relay Junction Gamma 9 experienced a triple system failure. Primary backup and secondary backup all failed. If not for the third backup that we thought was unnecessary, 70,000 travelers would have been stranded in hyperspace. The classroom was silent. They understood. Learning to think like human engineers meant learning to care about the people who depended on their work, even in unlikely scenarios. Humans did not just build systems, Thexior continued. They built systems that cared. That is the difference we must learn. After class, a student approached him. "Teacher, why did humans care so much? Other species build things to work. Humans built things to not fail. Why?" Thexior thought about Young-Su, the human who had trained him. "I think it is because they knew what it felt like to be the one depending on the system. They were not just engineers. They were also travelers, patients, residents. They designed systems for people like themselves. They had empathy." The student nodded slowly. "We must learn empathy then." "Yes," Thexior agreed. "That is the hardest lesson of all." Across council space, similar changes were happening. Engineering schools that once focused on innovation and advancement were now teaching maintenance and reliability. Military academies were adding logistics courses. Even the prestigious Science Institute had created a department for what they called applied practical systems. But cultural change was slow. Many still viewed this work as beneath them. Parents pressured children to pursue more prestigious careers. Young engineers dreamed of designing new technologies, not maintaining old ones. Corvish, the former military commander, now held a position that had not existed before. Council Infrastructure Minister. It was a role he had never wanted, but someone had to do it. His species were warriors. They valued strength, combat, honor. Maintaining relay networks and supply chains held no glory. Yet here he was, overseeing the massive effort to keep council space functioning. "Report," he ordered his staff. A logistical coordinator, a being with multiple eyes on stalks, brought up the latest data. "The hyperspace network is stable at 60% of original capacity. We have managed to prevent further collapses, but we cannot restore lost functionality. Medical supply chains are functioning at 75% efficiency. Agricultural satellites are at 80%, but we lost 3 more colonies this month because we could not maintain adequate food supply. 3 more colonies, Corvish repeated. How many does that make total? 47 abandoned colonies in 2 years. Corvish closed his eyes. 47 colonies. Tens of millions of people relocated to core worlds, abandoning their homes because the infrastructure could not support them. The council was shrinking, contracting inward, becoming a shadow of what it had been. We are surviving, the coordinator said, trying to sound positive. 2 years ago, we thought complete collapse was certain. We have adapted, Corvish said bitterly. We have learned to limp when we used to run. We have learned to accept failure as normal. This is not adaptation. This is decline. But what else could they do? The humans were not coming back. HFY stood on a hill overlooking the human colony of New Haven. Below her, towns sprawled in organic patterns that felt alive and vibrant. Children played in parks. Markets bustled with activity. The medical clinic her husband worked at was always staffed now. The school had enough teachers. The maintenance crews kept everything working smoothly. This colony had been struggling 5 years ago. Too many skilled workers had been pulled away to work for the council. Brain drain, they called it. The colony could never quite get established because its best people kept leaving. Now those people were staying. Or returning. The colony had grown from 8,000 residents to 20,000. New businesses opened. Families thrived. Culture flourished. HFY worked as the colony administrator, a job that would have been impossible when half their workforce was scattered across council space. Now she had engineers to maintain the power grid, doctors for the clinic, teachers for the schools, and builders for the new housing. She received messages sometimes from council officials, asking if New Haven would consider trading with nearby council colonies. The answer was always the same, yes, but at market rates, with no special obligations, and no permanent commitments. Humanity was willing to be friendly neighbors. They just would not be servants again. Her communicator beeped. A message from her daughter, who was studying xenobiology at the university on New Terra. Mom, I am thinking of applying for an exchange program with Council Space. They want human students to learn about other species. HFY smiled. The younger generation had different views. They had not experienced the thankless years of service. To them, the council was just another group of aliens. It's potentially interesting, not former employers to be avoided. She typed back, "That sounds wonderful. Just remember, you go as an equal, not as a helper. You learn from them, they learn from you, and you can always come home." Things would be different for the next generation. The council would not make the same mistakes again because they could not afford to. They knew now what they had lost. Speaker for Unity addressed the council chamber, now much smaller than it had been. Several species had withdrawn entirely, unable to maintain interstellar capability without human support. Others had reduced their presence to core worlds only. "We have survived 2 years," Speaker for Unity said. "We are not thriving, but we are not dead. We have learned to do work we once considered beneath us. We have changed our cultural values, slowly but genuinely. We honor now those who maintain and sustain, not just those who create and conquer." It was true. Infrastructure workers received public recognition now. Maintenance engineers were celebrated. Supply chain coordinators were respected. It was a complete reversal from just 3 years ago. We must acknowledge the truth, Speaker for Unity continued. We will never be what we were. The council at its height required human expertise that we cannot replicate. We can maintain a smaller, simpler version of ourselves. That must be enough. Warmix listened to the speech from his seat. He had aged significantly in 2 years. The stress of watching systems fail, of making impossible choices about what to save and what to abandon, had worn him down. But he had also learned. He understood now what humans had been doing all those years. He saw the careful planning, the thoughtful redundancy, the genuine care that went into their work. And he was humble enough to admit that his species, for all their intelligence, had never learned to care about work the way humans did. The council would survive, but it would be smaller, humbler. and forever marked by the absence of the species that had quietly held it together for 2 centuries. Dexior closed his classroom and headed home. He passed a memorial that had been erected in the station's central plaza. It listed the names of human workers who had served at this station over 200 years. Thousands of names. People who had lived here, worked here, maintained the systems that let everyone else live their lives. He stopped and read some of the names. Yang Su was there. So was Hoyanwu, and Ji Wu, and hundreds of others he had never met, never thanked, never even thought about. "We see you now," he whispered to the memorial. "Too late, but we see you." The memorial had been his idea. Other stations were building similar ones. It was a small gesture, but it mattered. The council was finally learning to appreciate what they had lost, even if they could never get it back. 5 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy had settled into a new normal that no one had expected. Te Dasheng sat in the archives of New Terra, surrounded by documents, interviews, and historical records. He was 28 years old, and he was writing the definitive history of what people were calling the separation. It was his doctoral thesis, but it had become something more. The galaxy needed to understand what had happened and why. His research had uncovered something surprising. The decision to leave had not been sudden at all. Human leadership had been discussing it for over 50 years. He found meeting minutes, policy papers, and private correspondence stretching back decades. All of it pointed to the same slow realization. Council membership was holding humanity back. They tried so hard to make it work, Taeyang muttered to himself. Reading a letter from a human ambassador written 40 years ago, they really wanted to be partners. But wanting was not enough. Year after year, humans had volunteered for infrastructure work, hoping it would lead to respect and integration. It never did. They remained the helpful servants, appreciated when remembered, but mostly invisible. The final decision came not from anger, but from mathematics. Human economists had calculated that the resources spent supporting council infrastructure could instead build thriving human colonies. Human social scientists had measured the cost in broken families, missed childhoods, and sacrificed dreams. Human medical researchers had documented the health impacts of constant travel and separation. The conclusion was clear. Humanity would be happier and more successful on their own, so they had filed the paperwork, offered training, and left. Simple as that. Taeyang's research would show that humanity's departure was not an emotional outburst, but a carefully considered choice made over decades. It was, in its way, the most human thing possible, practical, thorough, and focused on long-term well-being over short-term. Drama Sujin adjusted her formal robes as she prepared to enter the council chamber. She was the Human Federation's ambassador to the council, a position that had not existed for 5 years. The Federation had finally decided to restore diplomatic relations. But on very different terms. She walked through corridors that were noticeably different from 5 years ago. The station was smaller, older, showing signs of wear that would never have been visible when humans maintained it. But it was functioning. Barely, but functioning. The council chamber itself was only half full. So many species had withdrawn or reduced their presence. Those who remained looked tired, humbler than the proud civilization humanity had left behind. Ambassador Sujin, Speaker for Unity, greeted her. "Welcome. We are honored by your presence." "Thank you," Sujin said formally. She presented her credentials, officially re-establishing diplomatic contact between humanity and the Council. "We hope this means humans will consider returning Wormix began." But Sujin raised her hand gently. "Let me be clear from the start," she said. "The Human Federation values friendly relations with the Council. We will engage in trade, share non-sensitive knowledge, and maintain diplomatic communication. But we will not rejoin the Council. We will not maintain your infrastructure. We will not subordinate our development to your needs." The council members nodded, though some looked disappointed. They had known this was coming, but hope died hard. "We understand," Speaker for Unity said. "We do not expect what we once took for granted. We are grateful for any cooperation you are willing to offer." It was a complete reversal from 5 years ago. Then the council had assumed humans would always be there. Now, they were grateful for basic diplomatic contact. Sujin felt a mix of emotions. Satisfaction that humanity was finally being treated as equals. Sadness at how much the council had declined. But mostly, peace. Humanity had made the right choice. After the formal ceremony, she walked through the station with Dexier, who had volunteered to show her around. He had become one of the council's leading experts on human-designed systems, and he wanted her to see what they had accomplished. "This is Relay Junction Sigma 7, he said, pulling up a holographic display. "It is operating at 73% efficiency now. Not as good as when Young Su maintained it, but stable. We learned." "I am glad," Sujin said sincerely. "We never wanted the council to fail. We just needed to take care of ourselves first." "I understand now," Dexier said. "We asked too much and appreciated too little. We have built memorials. We teach your methods. We honor the work you did. But I know this does not undo the past," Sujin agreed. "But it means you learned. That matters." They passed a memorial wall with thousands of human names carved into it. Workers who had served the council over 2 centuries. Dexier stopped and bowed to it, a gesture of respect his species used for honored dead. "They were not dead," Sujin said gently. "Most of them are still alive, living good lives in human space." "I know," Dexier said. "But we killed the part of them that believed in the council. We killed their hope of being seen as partners. That deserves mourning." Sujin had no response to that. He was right. Corvish met with Sujin privately later that day. The former warrior, now infrastructure minister, looked older than his years. The stress of keeping council space functioning had aged him. "We survive," he told her bluntly, "but we do not thrive. The council is 1/3 its former size. We abandoned frontier colonies. We lost outer systems. What remains is stable, but small." "I am sorry," Sujin said, and meant it. "Do not be," Corvish said. "We did this to ourselves. You offered us 6 months' notice. You offered training. We ignored you. We assumed you would always be there. We were fools." He pulled up a map of council space. Sujin was shocked by how much it contracted. Systems that had been thriving colonies 5 years ago were now empty or returned to pre-spaceflight civilizations. "Could it have been different?" Corvish asked. "If we had listened? If we had responded to your withdrawal notice?" Sujin considered. "Maybe if you had taken us seriously. If you had genuinely worked to train replacements. If you had shown that you valued the work. Maybe humans would have stayed longer. Maybe the transition would have been smoother. But honestly, I think humanity was leaving regardless. You could have made it easier, but you could not have prevented it." Corvish nodded slowly. "Because you found something better. Yes, we found ourselves." In human space, life continued its upward trajectory. Colonies flourished. Population grew. Culture bloomed. Science advanced. The Human Federation was not as large or as diverse as the Council had been, but it was theirs, and they were happy. Heian-Wu, now in his 50s, worked as a senior engineer at a research facility on Terra Nova. He designed systems for human colonies, built with the same care and redundancy he had learned decades ago. But now he designed them for people he knew, for communities he was part of. His nephew, now 15, was interested in engineering too. Heian-Wu taught him on weekends, passing on the knowledge that had been passed to him. "Why do you always include backup systems for things that probably will not fail?" his nephew asked, echoing the question Heian-Wu himself had asked decades ago. "Because probably is not the same as certainly," Heian-Wu said. "And because someone will depend on this system. Maybe you. Maybe me. Maybe people we love. So we build it to care for them." His nephew nodded, understanding in a way that council species had taken years to learn. It was not just engineering. It was empathy made physical. It was care transformed into circuitry and code. Memory Keeper. An ancient artificial intelligence that had existed for millennia, observed the galaxy from its hidden station. It had watched countless civilizations rise and fall. It understood patterns that organic beings struggled to see. The Council's story was not unique. Throughout galactic history, dominant civilizations had often failed to value the work that sustained them. Some learned before collapse. Others did not. The Council had learned, but only after losing what mattered most. Humanity's story was less common, but not unprecedented. Sometimes species chose to walk away from prestige and power, choosing contentment over influence. Those who did usually thrived in their smaller, self-determined space. Memory Keeper filed away the data, adding it to its vast library of civilizational patterns. Perhaps someday, other species would access these records and learn from both the Council's mistake and humanity's wisdom. Su-Jin prepared to depart from Council space. Her diplomatic mission was complete. Relations were established, trade agreements signed, and boundaries clearly defined. Humanity and the Council would be friends but not partners. Neighbors, but not family. As her ship left the station, she looked back at the Council space, now a fraction of what it had been. She felt neither triumph nor regret. Just a quiet certainty that humanity had made the right choice. They had not defeated the Council in battle. They had not humiliated them with demands. They had simply chosen themselves, chosen their own happiness, and walked away with dignity that, in the end, was the most human thing of all, the strength to leave. What was not working, and the wisdom to build something better. The Council survived. Humanity thrived. And the galaxy learned a lesson that would echo for generations. Essential work must be valued. Not just when it is gone, but while it is being done.